Hey guys, tonight we drift into a damp Welsh hut, somewhere in the 10th century, where the fire's low and the walls are made of reeds and stubborn cold. The wind moans like it's got business here, and you're crouched beside a scribe whose quill is scratching over calfskin parchment. His fingers are ink-stained, his eyes are squinty, and he's just written something curious. According to the law he's drafting, if someone steals your cat, they owe you 1 full measure of grain, a sheep, and, if the cat was good at catching mice, a bonus piglet. Yes, you heard that right. Not just any cat. A useful cat. A Mauser. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stretch your legs and glance again at the parchment. It's thick and slightly curled, the kind that smells like ancient barns and rules no one dares break. The scribe's expression doesn't shift as he dips his quill and moves on to the next line, this one about the fine for smashing a beehive. Which, oddly, is the same as stealing a cat. You pause. You reread. Yes, cats and bees. Equal weight in law. This isn't some strange one-off. You're in early medieval Wales, and this is a copy of the laws of Hywel Dda, King Hywel the Good, whose legal reforms were so meticulous they involved livestock, land rights, inheritance, and domestic animals that most modern legal systems barely acknowledge beyond nuisance. Outside, the twilight stretches across the hills like a heavy wool blanket. The pastures are quiet except for a sheep's bleat and the buzz of bees just retreating to their hives. It's odd, isn't it, that in a world full of kings, conquests, and castle dramas, there was also time to decide how many pennies a neighbor owed you if his dog scared your cat. Or worse, if he swatted it in a fit of grumpiness. Historians still argue whether this focus on animals was an act of kindness, necessity, or control. The candle sputters. The scribe mutters something in Old Welsh, possibly about the price of goose quills, and you lean in closer. The law he's writing now is about compensation for a beehive moved during wartime. You blink. Moved? Not destroyed? Not stolen? Just relocated. And here's where things start to make a little more sense, if you squint through the logic of the time. In an agrarian society, cats were pest control. Bees were sugar and medicine. Protecting them wasn't quirky, it was vital. You run your hand across the edge of the table, feeling old grooves, as if hundreds of other hands had leaned in here too, confused by clauses and fees involving stings and scratches. A drop of wax from the candle hits the edge of the law book. You're not supposed to be here, technically. Not a noble, not a monk. Just a quiet visitor from nowhere in particular, invisible to the record. But maybe that's what makes you the perfect witness. You can see how this strange tapestry of laws, myths, and livestock customs stitches itself together, how a people tried to make sense of their world by writing it down. You imagine a small girl crying over her lost kitten, or a farmer waking up to find his beehive tipped over by a jealous neighbor. And instead of revenge, they went to a court of law, sat on a wooden bench, waited while a druid, a bishop, or a village elder said something like, well, according to Hywel's law. The past starts to soften in your mind now. No longer a place of constant warfare and grim mud, but of order, oddly shaped, scented with beeswax, marked with cat prints across scrolls. You lie back on the straw-stuffed mat in the corner of the hut, the laws of the land whispered over your shoulder like bedtime instructions for a very strange farm. Outside, a cat slinks under the cart. Bees thrum inside a woven skep. And someone, somewhere, just paid a fine because his goat ate someone else's honeycomb. You wake, or maybe you never quite fell asleep, as dawn dribbles through the slit in the wall. The world smells of wet earth and yesterday's firewood. The scribe has gone, leaving behind his inkwell and a crust of cheese. You push aside the stiff wool blanket and step outside. The mist hugs the hills, and the dew makes the grass cling to your ankles like cold fingertips. You follow the old path down toward a cluster of stone buildings, because today, you're shadowing the man behind all this curious legality, King Hywel Dda. Hywel the Good. He wasn't the kind of king who charged into battle shirtless or chucked axes from a horse. No, his legacy came from something quieter and far stickier, paperwork. Or rather, parchment work. And his obsession? Codifying every custom, compromise, and neighborhood grudge in a way that would outlive him. You trail him, imagining his boots sinking into the same mud you now trudge through, his cloak damp at the edges, his sleeves smudged with travel. The 10th century isn't gentle with its kings, but Hywel chose deliberation over domination. Instead of expanding borders through blood, he expanded his reach through law. He didn't make the laws up himself, oh no. He gathered scholars, judges, clerics, farmers, midwives, even swineherds, and asked them, what do people already believe is fair? What's been working in the valleys and pastures? What happens when a neighbor's dog kills your pig, or when someone builds a fence across your bee path? And here's where it gets spicy, he wrote it all down. In triplicate. In Latin, Old Welsh, and orally retold for the folks who couldn't read. That meant the laws weren't just dusty rules for kings, they were bedtime stories, fire pit tales, and market gossip. So yes, you can blame Hywel for the fact that there is an official legal difference between a cat that catches mice and one that's merely ornamental. Historians still argue whether Hywel was genuinely egalitarian or simply obsessed with micromanagement, but either way, you admire his energy. Imagine codifying every petty squabble in your village, right down to what if someone's rooster crows too early. As you wander into the village, the sun rising above mossy rooftops, you start to feel the weight of Hywel's choices. Law wasn't just a tool of punishment here, it was a strange form of protection. A way to ensure that even the lowliest cat, the humblest hive, had value. You pass a tavern where two men argue over a fence line, and instead of fists, they're quoting statutes. Yes, quoting. From memory. And one of them just mentions Section 9, concerning the forfeiture of a beehive by night. You almost snort. In the market, a woman slaps a thief with a hunk of stale bread, and instead of guards, a crowd gathers to decide what's fair. You wonder, what modern city would even try this? What courtroom today would entertain a case where someone's cow chewed the hem of another person's tunic? That's the thing about Hywel. He saw law not just as command but as conversation. A mirror to a culture that, for all its warlords and wooden houses, still took the time to ask, what is a life worth? Even if it's a cat's life. Later that day, you visit a small hilltop where Hywel's council once gathered. The stone circle remains, weathered but proud. They say he sat here, surrounded by voices from every corner of his kingdom, hammering out the value of a loaf of bread versus a stolen egg. And when someone brought up the question of cats and beehives, he didn't laugh. He nodded. The bees, he said, make wax and sweetness. They serve the monks, the bakers, the scribes. They belong to the land but work for the people. And cats, they keep the grain safe, guard the cellars, curl on laps in winter. They're not just creatures. They're workers. Allies. Part of the community. And so he wrote that down. And now, 1,000 years later, you're walking the same path, your breath misting an air thick with clover, and it strikes you, this old, strange law code isn't really about cats or bees. It's about what a society chooses to cherish. You rest under an ancient tree, roots tangled like sleeping snakes, and feel the hum of a beehive somewhere in the grass. A cat hops silently onto the stone wall beside you. It doesn't look at you. It doesn't care about the law. But for a brief moment, you feel like Hywel got it right. You follow the cat along a crumbling stone path, past sheep pens and ivy-draped huts, until it darts beneath a timber doorway. You duck your head to follow, and inside you find something unexpected, a small, dim chamber smelling of herbs and ink. At the center is an elderly woman hunched over a scroll, her fingers ink-stained and trembling. She doesn't look up. She's busy calculating the price of a cat's life. 3 stages, she mutters, half to herself. 3 lives, 3 values. You ease closer, your footsteps muffled on the rush-covered floor. Her quill scrapes softly as she continues. For a kitten too young to open its eyes, 1 penny. For a cat old enough to catch mice, 4 pence. But for a cat proven to kill vermin regularly, full restitution. Enough to make a thief regret their life choices. You blink. You've seen tax documents and land disputes, but this feels oddly specific. There's a calm certainty in how the woman records the cat's status, like she's valuing a piece of property and a cherished family member at once. This isn't just bookkeeping. It's precedent. Because in the eyes of Hywel's law, not all cats are created equal. If your pet was merely a lap warmer, charming and aloof, you might get sympathy but no compensation. But if your cat was a working mouser, a hunter of grain-spoiling rats, you could collect damages as if someone had broken your grain mill. Historians still argue whether these values were symbolic or truly enforced, but in the dim glow of that little room, you see no room for metaphor. The parchment is folded with care. The ink is real, and the lady sighs as if she's dealt with one too many people trying to claim that lazy cat was a champion mouser. Outside, the village bustles with noise, hooves on stone, laughter over bread, the distant clang of a blacksmith. But here in the scroll room, the law is personal. Real lives affected by tiny clauses. You flip through another parchment. One line reads, "If a cat damages the king's food, the master pays triple." Another notes that killing a cat in the sanctuary of a church earns a fine equal to harming a monk. You glance at the woman. She nods. "That one's true," she says. "A cat once leapt onto the bishop's table. Took his fish." No one laughed. Except the cat. And just when you think you've seen it all, she pulls out a folded scrap and shows you something stranger. A record of a trial. The cat wasn't accused, but the owner was. For failing to control it. The judgment? A formal apology, 2 coins, and a small bowl of milk offered in the chapel courtyard. Whether that was for the cat or symbolic, no one knows. You lean back, your head swimming with thoughts. In this world, cats weren't just pets, they were evidence of your household's order, your moral compass, your economic common sense. To let a mouser go missing or be mistreated meant you couldn't protect your grain, your family's food source, your very survival. And in this way, cats walk the line between domestic charm and legal commodity. Just useful enough to be protected, but mysterious enough to inspire superstition. You've heard whispers that cats were believed to carry souls across the veil, that they could see spirits, or that they slept where the air was thinnest between worlds. Maybe that's why their deaths weren't taken lightly. The sun has climbed higher now, and the woman finally puts down her quill. Her joints crack as she stands, and the cat, the same one you followed, leaps gracefully onto the table. She strokes its head. "He's worth 4 pence, she says with a smirk, "but I wouldn't sell him for 4 crowns. You nod. You get it now. In a world of harsh winters and early graves, any creature that gave warmth, protection, and company was priceless. You step back into the sunlight, blinking against the brightness. Down the road, children chase chickens. A woman tosses grain to pigeons. And beside a stone trough, another cat yawns, stretching like it owns the place. Maybe it does. At least on parchment. You head toward the orchard now, where you've heard bees are kept in old skeps woven from straw and sealed with mud. But as you walk, you glance back once. That little scroll room, that elderly scribe, that purring inked assistant, they'll stick with you. Proof that even in an age of swords and saints, someone paused to ask, how much is a good cat really worth? You reach the edge of the orchard just as the wind picks up, carrying the scent of crushed apples and clover. The trees sway gently above you, and beneath their branches sit rows of curious domes, skeps, the woven homes of bees, looking like squat beehive helmets left behind by sleepy nights. You crouch down to inspect one, only to be warned off by a boy with straw in his hair and a small scar above his brow. That one bites, he whispers, pointing to the hive as if it were a bad-tempered dog. Then he shrugs. But they all do, if you anger them. You nod solemnly, as if you've just been initiated into some ancient order, and step back respectfully. He beams. Good. You're not stupid. Most people are. He points to a nearby sign, just a carved symbol, really, meant to indicate ownership. Because in this village, every skep belongs to someone. And by law, it's as protected as a cow or a haystack. You step aside as the boy's father arrives, tall and dust-covered, carrying a smoker made from horn and twine. He kneels beside a hive and speaks softly, not to his son, but to the bees. You catch phrases like easy now and just a look, as though asking permission. He lifts the lid slowly, revealing a trembling world of gold and hum. The bees barely react. They've heard him before. According to Hywel's laws, disturbing a hive was not only frowned upon, it was punishable. Destroying a hive could land you with a hefty fine, sometimes paid in honey itself. Stealing honey? Even worse. And if you dared harm a hive on sacred land, you'd better start baking apology cakes. Literally. Honey cakes, offered in penance. The bees weren't just insects. They were employees. Clergy. Spirits. Depending on whom you asked. Some villagers swore they were the souls of dead children. Others claimed bees carried prayers. A monk once insisted that a hive buzzed louder during Massachusetts. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were symbolic or remnants of older pagan customs, but in practice, the bees were treated with eerie reverence. You watch as the beekeeper scoops a sliver of honeycomb and tastes it with the kind of expression normally reserved for holy wine. He offers you a taste. The honey is dark, rich, and oddly smoky. Heather, he says. Late bloom. Makes them moodier. He glances toward the hive. One stung a goat this morning. Sent her running. You can't help but smile. And then frown, because in this world, that sting could cause legal chaos. What if the goat had panicked, broken a fence, trampled someone's grain? Would the bees be blamed? Their owner? Was the goat provoking? These were not idle questions. Somewhere in Hywel's laws, there's a clause about chain reactions. Quite literally, a bee stings a horse, the horse bolts, the cart tips, and suddenly, you're testifying in court with a sting on your neck and no bread for the week. As you leave the orchard, you pass a small altar nestled between two trees. On it sits a bowl of milk, a strip of honeycomb, and, curiously, a few feathers. You ask the boy about it. For the bees and the cat, he says simply, as if this were obvious. To keep the house safe. You nod, not entirely sure if it's a blessing or a bribe. Probably both. And there, between the hives and the hearths, you begin to see the pattern. Cats guarded the grain. Bees made the sweetener. Both were guardians, in their way, of survival, of seasons, of stories whispered by firelight. And so they were woven into the law not as exceptions, but as essentials. As the sun sets behind the orchard, casting honeyed light through the leaves, you sit on a warm rock and let your mind buzz like the hives. Somewhere out there, a law still sleeps in parchment folds, declaring that a cat who guards the grain is more valuable than a lazy dog. And a beehive on borrowed land must be returned, comb and all, or face the wrath of the honey-deprived. You close your eyes, the scent of beeswax lingering in the air, and think, maybe these laws weren't about animals at all. Maybe they were about trust, roles, and the tiny lives that held a fragile kingdom together. You rise the next morning with grass pressed into your cheek and the soft buzz of bees still echoing in your ears. The air smells of wet hay and soot, and a rooster crows somewhere in the distance, late, by rooster standards. You stretch, blink against the rising sun, and make your way down a crooked lane lined with mossy stones and half-tilted fences. You're heading toward the village hall, or what passes for one here, a thatched meeting space with timber benches and a wobbly table, stained from years of elbows and ale. Inside, a young scribe is fussing over two scrolls, one unrolling dramatically like it's trying to escape, the other curling stubbornly at the edges. His hair is ink-speckled, and he doesn't even notice you at first. He's reading aloud to himself, probably for the 10th time, about property law. Specifically, the section where both cats and beehives appear, in the same clause. You stop short. Wait, what? He notices you then, startled, and hastily flattens the parchment. Ah, you're here for the livestock rulings, he offers. You nod solemnly. You don't correct him. He smooths the scroll with a flat palm, gestures for you to sit. Then, with the enthusiasm of someone who rarely gets to explain anything to anyone, he begins. It's not really that odd, he says. They're grouped together because both are boundary creatures. He smiles at your puzzled expression. They test the edge of ownership. Cats roam. Bees swarm. But both remember where they come from. That line sticks with you. You whisper at once, boundary creatures. The scribe nods, warming up now. The law says, if a man harms the cat of another, or disturbs a hive without cause, let him repay as if he has broken into the house itself. You blink. That's not metaphor. That's legal equation. The cat and hive weren't pets or produce. They were household extensions. Sacred satellites orbiting your home. He unrolls the parchment further, revealing more connections. There's a clause that states, if a hive is moved beyond its agreed path without consent, it is theft. You glance up, eyebrows raised. Yes, he says proudly. There are agreed paths for bees. Or rather, flight lines. We even map them sometimes. Historians still debate whether these be paths were practical understandings or mystical cartography, but in this law hall, it feels completely reasonable. Imagine a village meeting, neighbors arguing not over fences, but over which direction bees are allowed to fly. And it mattered, because bees could pollinate your apple tree, or your rivals. He shifts to another section. Here, look. A single clause. One paragraph. Both animals. And sure enough, there it is. Should a person inflict injury upon the bee or the mouser of another, and thus impair their usefulness, he shall make restitution in grain, wax, and silver, according to the measure of harm. You sit back, stunned. Equal standing. In a legal document penned before the Norman conquest, a buzzing insect and a prowling feline are measured in the same breath. Not as symbols, not as metaphors, but as workers, citizens. Outside, someone drops a bucket. A goat yells indignantly. The scribe glances up, frowns. That's the black goat again, he mutters. Broke into my herbs yesterday. You try not to laugh, but the scroll still rests before you, and it's clear now that these laws weren't stitched together randomly. They were designed by people who watched their world closely, who knew that one broken hive could mean no candles for a monastery, no salves for winter wounds. That one missing cat could lead to a rat infestation, spoiled grain, and a family starving by spring. By tying these creatures into law, they weren't elevating animals. They were anchoring their society, clarifying who owed what to whom when things, furry or buzzing, went awry. You thank the scribe and step out into the sun. Across the green, you see a small child attempting to herd a cat, who is politely ignoring all instructions. A hive thrums peacefully nearby, and on the door of the village baker's hut, you spot a painted sign, a black cat curled beside a golden skep. No words, just symbols, but everyone knows what it means. You walk on, thinking how odd it is that in an age of warriors and wool traders, the law took time to defend creatures most kingdoms ignored, or feared, or hunted. But not here. Not under Hyrule. Here, bees had maps. Cats had reputations. And if you wronged them, well, hope you had enough honey and grain to make amends. The sky is a soft, sleepy gray by the time you find yourself wandering into a village square that smells faintly of ash and baked barley. Morning markets have ended, and the muddy streets are scattered with the trampled remains of turnip tops and chicken feathers. You pass a huddle of farmers mending a wheel, a monk blessing a passing cart, and, under a fig tree that shouldn't be growing this far north, a cat lounging like it pays rent. It blinks at you, slowly. You nod back, respectfully. A low hum draws you toward the edge of the square, where a cluster of skeps stands arranged like miniature domes of straw. They're not fenced in, but everyone gives them a wide berth, like sacred ground. Next to them sits an old man, barefoot, with a face that looks like bark left out in the rain. He's carving bees into a slab of wood. Not drawing, carving. Deep, careful lines. You ask what he's doing. He grunts. Marking the good hives. The ones that came back. He taps the slab. 2 didn't. Flew off last spring. Found new land. That's their right. You blink. Their right? He shrugs. Bees follow laws too. Just older ones. Then he adds, but if someone steals the swarm, that's our law. He jabs a thumb toward the village hall. They'll fine him 5 pence, a jar of honey, and make him return every wax comb. You're about to ask who would steal a swarm when a woman nearby tells a story, half gossip, half warning, about the time a merchant from the next valley moved a hive to impress a priest. It backfired spectacularly. The bees stung his ox, he overturned a milk cart, and the priest refused the honey on ethical grounds. We made him sing hymns outside court for forgiveness, she adds. Off-key, I might mention. You're still chuckling when you notice another signboard hanging beside a granary door, the same pairing again. A cat and a skep. This one done in bright pigment, the colors still fresh. Above it, a phrase in Old Welsh that roughly means guardians of the store. It clicks. You've already seen how both creatures protect food sources, cats against vermin, bees through pollination and honey, but now, you're seeing how they're viewed as symbols of security. In a world with no locks, no surveillance, and no pest control beyond what nature offered, these animals were part of a household survival kit. They were also, curiously, signs of virtue. A clean home with a well-fed mouser and buzzing skeps? That meant the family was disciplined, prepared, connected to the rhythms of the land. A house without either careless or curse. You sit near the old man as he finishes his carving and sets it beside a pot of slowly melting beeswax. The scent is soothing, like sun-warmed honeycomb and clean wood. He dips a finger in the wax and rubs it on the carving to seal it. This one's for my daughter's house, he says. They just got married. No cat yet. still waiting for the right one to come. You nod. Because here, you don't choose a cat. One arrives, tests your windowsills, claims your household, or doesn't. The sun breaks briefly through the clouds, scattering light across the square. Children run past, chasing each other with braided grass hoops. A girl shrieks and points. Someone's knocked over a small skep. Everyone freezes. Even the bees seem to hold their breath. The old man rises slowly, walks to the fallen skep, lifts it gently. A few bees buzz out, annoyed but not panicked. He replaces it on its base and mutters something under his breath. A blessing? A warning? You can't tell. Then he turns to the child and says, not unkindly, you owe them a psalm. The girl gulps, then hums, quietly, shyly, a lullaby. Historians still debate whether these customs were legally binding or simply ritualized habits, but to the people here, the line is meaningless. Law and lore blend like wax and honey. A cat scratches your doorframe 3 nights in a row? Let it in. It's chosen you. A hive swarms near your land? Offer space, not smoke. Because when the rhythms of the world are fragile, you don't tempt chaos. You thank the guardians, furry or winged. And if you break that balance, you atone. With honey, with music, with whispered apologies into the wind. As dusk folds across the square, you rise and walk on. A soft paw print in a puddle catches your eye. You follow it, not because you have to, but because, in this place, even a muddy cat print might be pointing you towards something sacred. The night air has cooled the village to a hush, and your breath fogs gently as you follow the trail of paw prints down a narrow lane flanked by old oaks and leaning stone walls. The moon hangs low like a sleepy eye, peeking through the clouds. Somewhere ahead, you hear the low rumble of bees turning in their hives and the soft scurry of a rodent meeting its natural end, most likely thanks to a diligent cat who will never brag about it. You find yourself at the doorstep of a modest cottage tucked into the hillside, its windows glowing with the warm flicker of firelight. Inside, a woman is stirring a pot with one hand while the other idly strokes the head of a cat coiled on the bench beside her. She doesn't glance up as you enter. Somehow, she knows you're not really here, but also not entirely not here. You sit near the hearth, where a carved wooden skep hangs from a rafter like a charm. The cat purrs. The woman speaks softly, more to herself than to you. We pay attention to the ones who keep the quiet things running, she says. The bee, the mouser, the midwife. None get parades, but we don't last without them. You nod. The stew smells like barley and leeks, and you're tempted to ask for a bowl. Instead, you listen. She tells you a story, true or not, you're not sure, about a village not far from here that suffered 3 years of failed crops. Mice in the stores. No wax for candles. Rumors spread, the place had turned unlucky. But then someone remembered that long ago, they'd driven off a colony of bees to make room for a goat pen. And around the same time, a boy had drowned a neighbor's cat for stealing a fish. After that, no mouser would stay, no hive would settle. The villagers tried to fix it. They built a shrine from old combs and offered bowls of cream on every doorstep. Cats returned. Bees followed. By the next harvest, they had honey again, and no rats. We learned not to mock the little gods, she says, ladling stew into a wooden bowl and setting it near the cat, who ignores it. Whether it was divine justice, coincidence, or simple ecology doesn't matter. Historians still argue whether these stories reflect literal belief or metaphorical morality. But the villagers believed, and that shaped the law. You notice then that carved into the beam above her hearth is a phrase in worn old Welsh. She sees you squinting and translates, "What watches while you sleep is worth your bread." The bee in its hive, the cat on the sill. The laws written not for kings and armies, but for these quiet companions. The woman tells you of the annual cat income counting, a spring ritual where households tallied their mousers and skeps like sacred inventory. If you had more than 2 cats, you were expected to share one with a household that had none. If a skep had tripled in bees, a portion of wax went to the chapel. Not tithes, she says. Just manners. She pauses, and you feel the heaviness in her voice when she adds, "We don't do it anymore. Not formally. But I still count." She gestures at the hearth. 1 cat, 3 hives. That's balance. Outside, a low wind hums through the trees like distant voices in agreement. You rise, thank her without speaking, and step out into the silver-lit path. The cottage behind you glows steady and soft. A quiet place kept safe by tiny guardians. You walk on, pondering what balance meant in a world without thermostats or antibiotics. Where beeswax was medicine and candlelight, where cats were pest control and warmth. They weren't luxuries, they were infrastructure. Living, purring, buzzing assets. And in Hywel's law, they were acknowledged as such. Protected. Valued. Punishments for harming them weren't moral outrage, they were economic logic wrapped in reverence. Ahead, the lane splits. One path leads toward the hills, the other to a mill whose wheel you can just hear turning lazily. You choose the mill, drawn by the sound, and because, according to one clause you half remember, beehives placed too near a mill must be moved lest the hum distract the grinders. That's not a joke. That's law. The mill turns slowly in the moonlight, its great wheel groaning like an old man getting out of bed. Water slaps against wood, a rhythm older than the law books tucked into monks' sleeves. You step closer, careful not to slip on the mossy stones, and pause at the edge of the milling shed where flour dust hangs in the air like ghosts in no hurry. A soft buzz vibrates through the night, blending with the creek's rush. You squint into the shadows, and there they are. Hives. 3 of them, tucked beside the millstone wall, just under the eaves. Their placement isn't accidental. They've been nudged into this spot with precision, angled just enough to avoid the midday sun, close enough to the creek for moisture, far enough from the wheel to avoid that so-called grinding distraction. And yet, one is missing its lid. You hear movement and step around the corner to find a woman balancing a clay bowl and a small pot of wax. She's muttering under her breath, not spells, not prayers, but something in between. Stay warm. Stay dry. Don't take flight before spring, she says as she lowers the lid back onto the hive and seals it with a smear of wax. She glances at you, unsurprised. You're not from here, she says. You nod. She doesn't ask more. She points to the skeps. These used to belong to my grandmother. Passed down. Same bees? Maybe. Maybe not. But the bloodline's in the wax. You glance closer. Sure enough, the patterns on the old straw are etched faintly, a braid here, a spiral there. Marks of lineage. She explains, quietly, that ownership of hives wasn't always written down. Sometimes it was passed orally, through family tales, border markings, and whispered affirmations. That's why there's a law, she says, about inheriting bees. Not just the hive. The bees. A pause. And the knowledge of them. You've heard this before. One of Hywel's lesser-known clauses, if a family fails to tend inherited hives, they must gift the wax and honey to the local chapel, in shame. Not as punishment, but to ensure the bees are honored, even in absence. Historians still debate whether this clause was ever enforced. There are no records of bee-shame trials. But here, the belief is intact. As if to reinforce the point, a small black cat tiptoes onto the mill's ledge and peers into the water wheel, tail twitching. You see them together a lot, the woman says, watching the cat. Bees and cats. Not just in law. In life. She points behind her to a weathered carving, a skep cradled in a cat's curled tail. Old family sign, she explains. We called them hearth twins. You think back to the phrase from the cottage. What watches while you sleep is worth your bread. The woman reaches into a basket and pulls out a biscuit, dense, sweet-smelling, flecked with something golden. Honey oat, she offers. Old recipe. Cats get the crumbs. And sure enough, the cat saunters over, patient, knowing its role in this exchange. She breaks the biscuit, drops a piece, and the cat pounces delicately. The bees ignore the whole affair. Too dignified. As the wheel turns beside you, water running through its cycle, you start to understand, in this world, protection is reciprocal. Bees make wax, humans house them. Cats guard grain, humans feed them. And when law enters the picture, it doesn't disturb that balance, it recognizes it, codifies it, makes it matter. You turn to the woman. Why do you think they wrote it down? The laws about bees and cats? She smiles without looking up. Because someone was paying attention. And maybe that's all it took, one king with enough humility to ask the old women and the mill workers what they valued most. One scribe who saw a Mauser curled in the corner and didn't dismiss it. One elder who noticed how a hive's absence changed the village's rhythm. The woman collects her basket and stands. If you see a cat tonight, she adds, and it walks away from your door, don't follow. Let it find its own path. The cat glances at you. Just once. Then disappears into the dark. You sit a while longer beside the hives, listening to the water wheel and the tiny, invisible flutter of wings behind straw walls. The air smells of river moss and flower and something older, like promises kept in wax. And you think again about inheritance. Not just bees and cats, but the laws that remember them. That choose, of all things, to preserve their value with ink and parchment, while empires crumbled. The village is quiet again when you rise, the kind of stillness that settles only after every hearth has cooled and even the dogs have given up their patrols. The moon is low, nearly gone, and the stars flicker like uncertain candle flames. You take the high path now, up toward the church, where stone steps wind through mist and frost clings to the grass like powdered sugar. As you climb, your breath comes slower, and the air seems older here, like you're walking into memory itself. The chapel is small, stone-built, barely wider than a cart, with a wooden door too short for anyone ambitious. But what it lacks in grandeur, it makes up for in whispers. Every corner of it feels steeped in repetition. Chanted prayers, names of the dead, and oddly, cats. You step inside and blink at the interior, dimly lit by a single beeswax candle flickering at the altar. The scent is warm and thick, incense and honey. You pause at a carved bench, where a monk once sat and etched a cat into the wood, not a saint, not a cross. A cat, tail curled, eyes open, like it was guarding the place. You move closer to the altar and see the candle's holder. It's shaped like a skep, the beehive again, ever present. Next to it, a little saucer, empty now, but once surely filled with milk. For what? Or for whom? A voice behind you murmurs, "We keep both here." You turn to see a young priest in a threadbare robe, eyes shadowed with sleeplessness, but kind. He gestures to a corner of the chapel, and there, of course, is a cat, fast asleep on a cushion, paws tucked neatly under its chest like it owns the entire doctrine. "She arrived 5 winters ago," he says. "Just after the snow. Took up vigil. Never missed a sermon." He smiles. "We didn't question it. Just adapted." You sit. He continues. "Hywel's law protects church cats, you know. There's a clause. If a cat is known to dwell in the sanctuary, harming it is a fine equal to wounding a deacon. Some say it's superstition. I say it's good sense." You nod. "A deacon feeds your soul. A cat keeps the grain from rotting. Why not protect both?" Historians still argue whether this clause was symbolic or enforceable, whether it represented actual practice or hopeful principle, but here, the distinction doesn't matter. The law stands. Written. Remembered. Revered. The priest tells you stories. About bees flying in through the chapel's slats and nesting in the eaves above the altar, undisturbed, considered a blessing. About wax harvested each spring to make candles only for Massachusetts. About the way people bowed their heads not just to God, but to the small miracles that made worship possible, the wax, the purr, the hush. And about one winter, long ago, when a boy tossed a stone at the chapel cat. It limped for days. The village gathered, outraged, not to punish, but to teach. The boy was made to build 3 hives by hand, braid by braid, for 3 neighboring families. No one remembers his name now, but the hives still stand. You run your hand along the edge of the pew, feeling the grooves worn by centuries of kneeling. The cat stretches and yawns, then jumps softly to the floor and winds around your legs like you've been chosen. The priest chuckles. "She likes you. That's a rare thing." You kneel by the altar, just for a moment. Not in worship, but in recognition. For the invisible network that holds this place together. Bees in the rafters. A Mauser on the pew. Wax that burns for the weary. Milk that waits for the watcher. On your way out, you spot another carving in the doorway, a bee with wings outstretched, flanked by 2 cats. You're starting to think every doorway here has them, tucked between saints and kings. Outside, the frost has thickened, turning the path to glass. The wind hums through the chapel eaves, and somewhere beneath the stones, a hive thrums softly, as it always has. You walk downhill slowly, the chapel's light dimming behind you, but the warmth of that beeswax flame lingering in your chest. The law might be old, frayed at the edges, but here, it is still lived, still whispered, still walked on soft paws through sacred halls. Your boots crunch softly over frost-kissed grass as you descend from the chapel, the sky paling at the edges. A faint pink blush creeps over the hills, promising dawn, though the world still feels wrapped in the hush of deep night. You follow the lane to the edge of the village where the cottages thin and the fields stretch out like folded blankets, frozen in place. Here, in the outskirts, where the land is more wild than tame, you come upon a woman standing at the edge of a fence, her arms folded, watching something you can't yet see. You approach quietly, and she points, not at the sky or the sheep beyond, but at a single post driven into the ground. Nailed to it is a wooden disc carved with two familiar symbols, a cat and a skep. That, she says softly, is a boundary marker. You raise an eyebrow. She nods. Not for land. For respect. Her voice is firm, not angry. It tells people, there's a working Mauser here. There are hives. Be careful where your goats wander. You realize she's not warning you. She's quoting law. Hywel's law, in fact, a clause that states if your livestock damages another's working animals or tools, you owe full restitution. And if you cross such a boundary knowingly, the fine doubles. Even in a place with no fences, no gates, there were lines you did not cross. She walks you along the path, showing other markers, some faint, worn by time, others recently re-etched. We still keep them, she says. Don't need written law to know better, but having it helps. Her fingers trail the top of a post. Helps us remember that even the smallest rolls hold weight. As you walk, she shares another story of a traveling merchant who ignored a marker, cut through a yard, spooked the hive. The bees attacked his horse. He fled, injured. The villagers debated for days. Was he ignorant or arrogant? In the end, he had to return. Apologize. Offer 2 jars of honey, a silver token, and, curiously, a fish. Why a fish? She shrugs. The cat forgave him faster than we did. You pass a faded sketch on a stone wall, 2 children carrying a skep between them, guided by a cat. No names. No explanation. Just the same themes, repeated again and again like verses in a hymn. Historians still argue whether these images were symbolic warnings or communal reminders, but here, they seem to do both. They remind you that boundaries in medieval Wales were not just physical, they were moral, ecological, deeply local. And animals, cats and bees in particular, weren't merely parts of the system. They were the system. Mess with them, and you unraveled everything. You reach a low stone wall and find a small wooden gate that swings open with a creak. On the other side, an old barn tilts against the slope, barely upright. Watch your step, she says. There's a queen in there. You glance around, startled. She chuckles. Be queen. Not nobility. Though she acts like it. Inside the barn, amidst stacked baskets and broken crates, is a long, low platform where several skeps rest under canvas. A soft hum rises as the temperature shifts. Near them, on a shelf, lies a shallow dish filled with cream. A cat perches beside it, licking daintily, not bothering to acknowledge your arrival. They keep each other company, the woman says. That cat guards the hives. Chases mice. Sleeps there all winter. Never tries the honey. A pause. Not once. You ask if the arrangement is common. She nods. Old wisdom. We call them shadow keepers. You protect them, they protect the store. They understand balance better than we do. The cat stretches and jumps down, tail high, then weaves between your legs as if to say, you've passed the test. The woman hands you a small carved token, a cat, a skep, joined by a thread of ivy. Keep this, she says, to remember where the boundaries are. You step outside into the rising light, the barn door creaking shut behind you. The land hums with quiet purpose. Nothing flashy. Just order. Relationships held together by paw prints and pollen. As you walk back toward the heart of the village, you think, there's no need to overstate it. These laws, these customs, they weren't just about animals. They were blueprints. On how to live, how to share space, how to be in the world without tipping it. And the world, even now, seems to agree. A cat slips past you into a yard, unnoticed but essential. A cluster of bees lifts in the air nearby, tracing invisible paths over the frostbitten clover. And the rising sun catches the dew on an old marker stone, faint symbols carved long ago, still legible, still speaking. By mid-morning, the village has awakened. Smoke curls from chimneys, the blacksmith's hammer rings in lazy rhythm, and carts rattle along uneven lanes like bones in a drum. You drift toward the edge of the market square where a dispute is unfolding, not with shouts or fists, but in firm voices and pointed gestures. Two men stand before a low table, one holding a basket of bruised apples, the other shaking a jar of honey that's clearly begun to ferment. A third figure, a mediator, perhaps, leans on a walking stick carved with a spiral, listening intently. You pause nearby, interested. The dispute, as it turns out, isn't about price. It's about placement. The apple seller swears the honeymaker's bees have been feasting on his orchard's blossoms without permission, sweetening their honey unfairly. The beekeeper counters that bees don't obey fences, and besides, no one owns the air. The old man with the stick sighs and looks at the ground. "We've done this before," he mutters. He points to a stone marker half buried in the soil, another boundary stone, though this one's so moss-covered you'd have missed it entirely. Upon closer inspection, it bears the now familiar symbols, the cat and the skep, entwined like a family crest. The man begins quoting, slowly, rhythmically, a law you almost recognize from earlier readings. If bees of a hive cross into another's blossom field and produce honey from trees not freely offered, then compensation shall be 1/6 of the gathered wax, or 2 apples per jar. A beet, depending on the season. You blink. That's shockingly specific. Historians still argue whether these laws were rigid codes or more like flexible guidelines, but today, in this square, no one's debating. The apple man nods. The beekeeper grumbles, but reaches into his satchel and withdraws a block of wax. He places it on the table. "For the sake of peace," he mutters. They shake hands. Just like that, it's done. A boy nearby mutters something about the cat claws. You tilt your head. He points to a loaf of bread resting on another table, conspicuously missing a corner. They say if a cat steals bread and eats it in the open, it's the baker's fault for leaving it out. His friend adds, but if it carries it inside, the cat owes nothing. It's house food now. You don't know if that's law or folklore, but you desperately hope it's both. Cats and bees. Not just protected by law, but woven into daily logic. These weren't one-off decisions by a particularly cat-loving king. These were ideas that had taken root across generations, each clause reflecting not just fairness but familiarity. The kind of rules people remember because they feel like home. You find yourself wandering again, deeper into the market, where a woman sells candles shaped like tiny hives. She dips them by hand into a bubbling pot of wax, muttering prayers under her breath. Each candle is wrapped in paper, and on each wrapper, a small black paw print is stamped. You ask her what it means. She shrugs. The Mauser's blessing. If you light it during a storm, your grain won't spoil. You smile, unsure whether she believes it or just enjoys saying it. But again, you realize the answer doesn't matter. Laws in Hywel's time weren't simply about restriction. They were about reassurance. About codifying relationships people already lived by. The line between animal and asset, between superstition and statute, it wasn't a line at all. It was a braid. You pause at a stall selling cloth dyed with beeswax patterns. A merchant offers you a strip as a token, its surface printed with a cat curled around a hive. You pocket it, carefully. You're collecting more than souvenirs now, you're collecting belief systems stitched into everyday life. Later, you sit by a well and watch the villagers pass. A child chases a cat carrying a stolen bit of sausage. No one intervenes. The baker just sighs, waves a hand, and tosses another slice on the steps, an offering, or perhaps just a peace treaty. Nearby, a man adjusts a cover on his beehive, gently pressing the lid down like tucking in a fussy child. And as the hum rises again into the warm air, you feel it, not just admiration, but understanding. The bees work, the cat watches, the people remember. And the laws? The laws don't interfere. They echo. They remind. They whisper, this matters. You find yourself walking again, this time along a hedgerow path worn smooth by centuries of feet, some barefoot, some booted, and some probably pawed. The trees bend inward here, forming a natural archway that drips with ivy and dew, and somewhere in the underbrush, you hear the faint clicking of claws on stone. A cat, no doubt, off on its mysterious business. Up ahead is a thatched cottage with smoke curling from the chimney. Its door stands open. You knock, but no one answers, so you step inside, quietly, curiously. The air is thick with herbs, thyme, yarrow, lavender, dried and hanging from beams like nature's chandeliers. On the central table, beside a crooked bowl of apples, lies an open scroll. Legal parchment. The room is lined with objects, clay pots, beeswax candles, bundles of nettle, and, on a small cushion in the window, yet another cat, this one old and slow blinking. The scent of wax and fur is oddly comforting. The scroll is curious. It's a ledger, not of money, but of loss. The names of cats, dates beside them, places. A few simple lines for each. Bramwin, taken by Fox. Replaced by Carrie. Milo, missing after the flood. Di, stolen. Beside each, a final note, restitution sought. Witnesses gathered. Compensation denied. You realize this is a record of cat-related claims. Legal ones. Brought to local councils, adjudicated, and either approved or rejected. This was someone's personal archive. A chronicle of feline justice. You sit slowly and scan further. One entry stands out, Reese's Mauser. No name. Just 3 years service. Grain saved. Bread secured. And then, poisoned. The entry is underlined twice in red ink. Beside it, one word, fine paid. Historians still argue whether such records were formal legal filings or informal customs kept by the literate few. But here it is. Paper that remembers what people forget. The sound of steps on the path breaks your reverie. A woman enters, tall, hair graying at the temples, arms dusted with flour. She pauses, sees you at the table, and smiles softly. You found my father's scroll, she says. He kept the record. Said if people didn't believe cats had value, the ink would. You tell her it's remarkable. She shrugs. They kept the rats out of the granary. Saved more grain than any scarecrow. If one was stolen, it was theft. If one was harmed, it was sabotage. She sets down a basket of bread, fresh, warm, and shaped like small hives. The smell is heavenly. The cat in the window stirs and, with clear expectation, receives a corner crust. The woman sits across from you and pours tea. The bees have their ledgers too, she says. Each swarm gets tagged, not with names, but wax colors. That way we know which hive went where. If someone takes one, we know. You nod slowly, realizing the incredible precision that underpinned this world. It wasn't romantic. It was functional. Every animal had a purpose. And when it fulfilled that purpose, the law made space for its protection. She tells you about a case she witnessed as a child, a man caught selling honey that wasn't his. The village gathered. A monk tested the wax and found it tinted with a pigment only used by the chapel hives. He was fined 3 silver pennies and made to tend the chapel bees for 2 seasons. It wasn't punishment, she explains. It was education. You ask if such things happen now. She hesitates. Less formally. But we still remember. She picks up the scroll again and taps one entry. This one mattered. He was a Mauser that caught over 50 in a season. Saved 3 barrels of grain. We buried him under the skep. You follow her outside to the back garden. There, beneath a stone slab marked with a cat's print and a curl of carved ivy, lies Reese's Mauser. Atop the grave? A tiny beeswax candle, burned halfway. That's the thank you, she says. You kneel. It feels like something between a shrine and a memory. This world, you think, doesn't divide the sacred from the small. Here, loss is measured not only in kings and battles, but in the silent absence of a Mauser at dusk, the missing hum of bees in spring. And the law, far from cold, writes that grief into history. The day is sinking toward evening when you leave the garden, the weight of history resting more heavily on your shoulders than you expected. The path you walk is familiar now, past the bakery where a new batch of bread emerges from the oven, past the clustered cottages with their smoke curling into the pale blue sky, toward the edge of the village where the wilds begin again. The air smells of wet earth and damp leaves, with a slight hint of honey on the wind. It's a smell you've become accustomed to, sweet and earthy, like everything in this place is connected, winding through each other like the ivy that clings to the chapel walls. And then, as you reach the edge of the village, you see something that makes you pause. A tall stone post stands by the side of the path, carved with the same symbols you've seen in so many places, a cat, a skep, the intertwined ivy. But there's something more to it, an engraving beneath, faint but legible in the twilight. You step closer. It reads, "By the law of the land, let none forget, the work of the smallest holds value." A simple phrase. A quiet command. Yet, something in it stirs you deeply, like you've uncovered the heart of it all. You sit by the post, letting the evening silence settle around you, your fingers brushing over the worn stone. Cats and bees. The humble creatures whose work keeps the fabric of life together, whose value was woven into law long before you arrived here. As you sit in the quiet, the light from the village seems far away now. The sound of water trickling from the nearby stream is a gentle murmur, blending with the soft buzz of late bees still flying home. The last cat you saw on the village path, curled up by the gate, reminds you again that they belong here, as much as the people, as much as the land. Their place was never negotiable, and neither was their worth. The stillness is broken by the sudden sharp sound of claws on stone. You look up, startled, and see a cat approaching, a small gray one, lean and quick, with an air of quiet authority. It doesn't stop or look at you, just moves past with a steady purpose. It climbs to the top of the stone post, perches there for a moment, then jumps lightly down into the underbrush. You watch as it disappears into the wild, leaving the stone post standing sentinel. You stand slowly, brushing off your clothes, and begin the walk back to the village. The final evening light softens the world around you, making everything feel more intimate, more connected. As you pass the edge of the trees and head back toward the homes and hearths, it strikes you that this entire village, this entire world, has a kind of ancient magic to it. Not in spells or incantations, but in the care they take with the smallest things, the simplest creatures. You don't need the laws to tell you that. You've seen it in the way the villagers watch their bees, tend their cats, and protect their balance. The stone marker, the bread, the beeswax candles, all these things point to something profound, something simple. In a world so often dominated by the loudest voices, it's the quiet ones who truly matter. As you enter the village once more, the night has fully fallen. The glow of lanterns spills into the street, casting long shadows on the ground. You hear the quiet chatter of the market winding down, the last customers leaving with bundles of produce and small talk. A soft meow breaks the silence, and you turn to see the same gray cat from earlier, now sitting in the middle of the street, as if waiting for you. It looks at you for a long moment, and for the briefest instant, you feel like it's offering you a silent understanding, a shared knowledge of this place, of its laws and its rhythms. Then, just as quickly, it turns and disappears into the shadows, leaving you with nothing but the memory of its quiet presence. You smile to yourself. The smallest things, the smallest creatures. Their work may be invisible to most, but you've seen the truth of it. Here, even the quietest whispers of the world matter. And with that thought, you turn toward the firelight ahead, ready to settle in for the night, knowing that tomorrow, there will be more stories to uncover of cats, bees, and the unspoken laws that make this world turn. The next morning dawns with a crisp bite in the air, the kind that promises frost but holds back, just teasing the earth. You're not entirely surprised to find yourself back at the village square, where the cobblestones still hold the traces of yesterday's busy market. The sun is still shy, its golden fingers stretching over rooftops and apple trees, casting long, soft shadows on the ground. You make your way toward the center of town, where the well stands tall, one of the oldest landmarks in the village. It's said that the water there was once blessed by a monk who lived a lifetime ago, and ever since, it's been a meeting point for those who want to hear the latest gossip, catch up on news, or simply draw water for the day. Today, however, it's a quiet place, just the sound of a few birds chirping overhead and the occasional creak of the rope as it dips into the well. As you approach, you see a group of children gathered near the base of the well, their voices low as they pass something between them. You move closer, curious, and see they're holding something wrapped in cloth. A small, gray kitten, curled up in the center, its fur still damp with the morning dew. The eldest of the children, a girl with a tangle of dark hair, looks up as you approach. "Found him this morning," she says with a grin, as though this is the most natural thing in the world. "A stray. He'll make a good mouser, don't you think?" You smile, but inside, something stirs. It's not just the kitten that captures your attention. It's the casual way the children regard it, as if this little creature is just another part of the village's fabric, ready to fall into its place. The girl hands you the kitten, and it stretches in your hands, yawning widely before blinking up at you with those wide, untrusting eyes. "He's not yours," she says with a knowing look. "He's for the house over there." She gestures toward a nearby cottage with a tidy garden. "He'll get to work soon enough." The simple words hit you harder than you expect. Cats aren't just pets here. They aren't just animals, they're workers. They're the silent guardians of the village, keeping everything in balance. And in Hywel's time, the law saw this. It protected them, not because they were loved in the human sense, but because they were necessary. You hand the kitten back to the children and watch them carry it to the cottage, chattering in their playful way. As you turn to leave, you spot the woman who had given you the carved token, now standing near the well. She gives you a nod, as if she, too, understands the importance of what just happened. Her eyes fall on the kitten, and then back to you. "It's a quiet kind of power, isn't it?" she says softly. "The kind that doesn't scream for attention, but demands respect all the same." You nod, feeling a deep sense of understanding settle in your chest. It's true. The laws may have been old, and many may have faded with time. But the values, the respect for balance, for nature, for the tiny, often invisible creatures that held the world together, those have endured. The sun climbs higher now, casting a warm glow over the square. You breathe in deeply, and for a moment, the weight of the world feels lighter. You've seen what you came for. The laws, the customs, the stories, they're not just history. They're still alive here, woven into the rhythm of everyday life. You begin walking slowly, the familiar path ahead of you feeling different now. You realize that, just like the cat and the bees, you, too, have found your place in this strange, wonderful balance. You're not just passing through anymore. You're part of it all. And maybe, just maybe, that's what these laws were all about. As the morning deepens, you continue walking toward the hills, the village behind you now a soft memory. The world hums quietly, and with every step, you carry the story of the cats, the bees, and the simple but profound law that connects them all. By midday, the village is alive with its usual bustle. The forge's hammer rings steadily, children play at the edges of the fields, and the smells of roasting meat and freshly baked bread drift through the air. You find yourself back at the edge of the village, just outside the old stone wall that marks the boundary. The quiet sense of peace that had settled over you the night before lingers like a soft weight on your shoulders. It's then that you spot the old woman again, the one who spoke of the bees and cats, the one who had shown you the ledger of lost mousers. She's standing by a small stall at the far end of the square, next to the path that leads out of the village. This time, she's not holding a basket of herbs or a bundle of dried flowers. Instead, she's tending to something much more familiar. It's a skep, a beehive, set upright, freshly coated with beeswax, the scent of it thick and warm in the air. The bees inside hum with quiet purpose, their wings a faint whisper of sound. You approach cautiously, remembering how the bees had a way of knowing when they were being watched. She notices you and smiles, though it's more of a knowing look than an invitation. "Ah," she says, her voice soft but steady. "You've come to understand. The small things. The quiet things." You nod, not sure what to say, but feeling that pull of connection again, this time, not with the laws, but with the creatures themselves. She gestures to the skep and then to a small table beside her, where a tray of honeycomb rests. "Every year, I make sure the hives are settled," she explains. "And every year, I remember that it isn't just about the honey. It's about the work. The quiet, unseen work that holds us all together. The bees, the cats, they remind us that nothing works without those who don't demand the spotlight." She picks up a piece of honeycomb and holds it up to you. "Go on," she encourages. "Taste it. You'll see. The sweetness comes from the effort, the balance. Without that, there's no flavor." You take the piece from her, careful not to disturb the bees as they pass by. The honey is rich and warm, with a taste that feels almost like a memory of summer days, of hard work, of quiet moments. You savor it for a moment, then hand the rest back to her. The old woman watches you, her gaze steady. The world doesn't work on grand gestures. It works on the small ones. The ones that don't make a sound. She pauses, letting her words settle. That's what the law understood, in its own way. It wasn't about the big deeds. It was about the little things that made life possible. You feel the weight of her words. The bees and cats, yes. But also the villagers, the families, the quiet rhythms of life that depend on them. You glance back toward the village, where the life you've witnessed is unfolding again, quietly, humbly. You feel like you've been given a glimpse into something much deeper than laws or traditions. Something that connects everyone and everything, cats, bees, people, land. The old woman nods, as if reading your thoughts. It's all part of the same web. The laws may change, the customs evolve, but the essentials remain. And those are the things worth protecting. She turns back to her skep, checking it over with the practiced hands of someone who's been tending hives for as long as she can remember. The bees hum their approval. You watch them for a moment before turning away, the quiet understanding of this place settling deeper within you. As you walk back toward the village, the sun now climbing higher, you realize that this journey has been about much more than history or laws. It's about recognizing the quiet forces that hold life together, the unnoticed work, the invisible threads that connect everyone, from the tiniest bee to the most ancient law. You step into the square, the village alive and vibrant around you. And though the world moves on, you know that the rhythm of this place will remain steady, as long as the cats continue to prowl, the bees continue to hum, and the quiet laws continue to weave their timeless thread. As you enter the heart of the village again, the lively hum of daily life swirls around you. The smith's hammer clangs in the distance, a child runs past with a basket, and the rich scent of fresh bread teases your senses. The cobblestones are already warmed by the morning sun, and the marketplace is alive with chatter and exchange. But something feels different now. The rhythm of the village, once a simple backdrop, now seems alive, resonating with a deeper understanding, as if you've finally tuned into its heartbeat. You find yourself drifting toward the outskirts of town, where the edges of civilization gently blend into the wild, untouched land. There, nestled among the trees, is an old stone wall, weathered, worn, and half-forgotten. It isn't much to look at, but it holds an undeniable weight. This, you realize, is the boundary. The literal line where the village ends, where the law of man gives way to the law of nature. You trace the edge of the stone wall, your fingers brushing against the ancient stones. There's something about the way the wall stands, together, yet apart, that speaks to you. It isn't a barrier. It's a marker. A place where the balance shifts, where law and nature meet and coexist. As you continue walking, you notice a figure sitting near the wall. It's a man, bent with age, his clothes simple but sturdy. He's weaving something out of reeds, slow, deliberate movements as his hands work, familiar with the task at hand. A basket, you realize. A simple, everyday object. Yet, as you watch, you see the care in his work. Each reed placed carefully, each twist done with purpose. It's as though the act of weaving, simple as it is, connects him to something much older, something woven into the fabric of the village itself. He looks up and sees you standing there, watching. "Ah, you've noticed," he says with a crooked smile, his voice gravelly but warm. "These walls hold more than just stone. They hold the knowledge of those who came before us. The cats, the bees, the trees, they're all part of it. You don't see them always, but they're here." You step closer, intrigued. "You're saying the wall is part of the law?" He chuckles softly, shaking his head. "Not just the wall. The whole land. The air. The earth beneath our feet. Everything here is governed by the same balance. The law you've been learning about, it's not just in scrolls and books. It's in the ground, in the water, in the animals that keep the system going." He pauses, his hands stilling for a moment as if savoring the thought. The law of the land. It's older than Hyrule. It's older than anyone can remember. It's in the smallest things. The quiet things. You look out over the land, feeling the truth of his words settle in. The village, the boundaries, the animals, all of it is woven together into a delicate, invisible web. The law wasn't just a set of rules that could be written down and forgotten. It was alive. It was woven into the very fabric of life, a constant reminder that every living thing, no matter how small, had a role to play. The old man begins weaving again, his hands working with steady precision. Hywel understood that, he says. He knew that the law had to protect more than just people. It had to protect everything. The bees, the cats, the trees. They're all part of the balance. If one of them falls, the whole system is disrupted. And that's why, even now, we remember. You watch him work, the steady rhythm of his hands echoing the rhythm of the land around you. It's a quiet kind of power, this work. Unseen, but steady. Unnoticed, but vital. You realize that this is what you've been searching for all along, not just the laws written in ancient scrolls, but the deeper truth beneath them, that everything is connected. That the small things, the quiet things, are the ones that hold the world together. You thank the man and continue your walk, the air cool and fresh as the village fades behind you. The stone wall continues beside you, steady and strong, as the land opens up before you. The trees stretch higher, the grass sways in the wind, and the distant hum of bees fills the air. As you reach the edge of the village, where the path begins to disappear into the wilds, you take one last look back. The village is small, but it's full of life, full of connection. And the laws that govern it, though old, still hold strong. Not because they are written in books or spoken by kings, but because they are woven into the very fabric of this place, into the hearts of the people, into the land, into the animals that share it. You walk on, the path ahead open and waiting, and as you step forward, you feel the weight of the lawless lands behind you, still alive in the quiet hum of the earth beneath your feet. The wind picks up as you walk further into the wilds, the trees growing taller and thicker as the village fades behind you. The path here is less clear, winding through ferns and brambles, the earth softer beneath your boots. The hum of bees and the rustle of leaves are the only sounds now, a natural rhythm that seems to sync with your own breath. You stop for a moment, letting the silence settle in. Here, the world feels untouched, raw. There are no walls, no boundaries, no markers of civilization. Just the land, wide and open, stretching endlessly in every direction. It's strange how much you've come to understand in just a few days. The village, the people, the laws, everything is tied together, as fragile and necessary as the wings of the bees that flit about the flowers. It's all about balance. The cats, the hives, the people, they all work together in ways you never truly understood before. Now, it's clear, it's not just about protection. It's about coexistence. As you continue on the path, the trees begin to thin, revealing a small clearing ahead. In the center of the clearing stands a large stone, worn smooth by centuries of weather. It's a simple thing, not unlike the boundary markers you've seen before, but this one feels different. It's older, more worn, as if it's been here long before anyone could remember. And yet, it feels alive, as if it holds the history of the land itself within its stone. You approach the stone and place your hand gently on its surface. The feeling is familiar, like the soft hum of the bees or the comforting weight of a cat curled up in your lap. It's a presence, something that has always been here, even if you couldn't see it before. It's a reminder that the laws, those old, ancient laws, are not just written in ink on paper. They are written into the land itself. The sun is beginning to set, casting long shadows across the clearing, and you feel a sense of peace settle over you. You sit on the stone, letting the quiet wash over you, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath you. For the first time, you understand the true meaning of the laws you've learned about. They aren't just rules to be followed. They are the rhythm of life, the heartbeat of this world. They are not just of the people, they are with the people, woven into every thread of existence. You close your eyes and listen to the world around you. The distant hum of bees, the soft rustling of leaves, the faintest sound of paws padding through the underbrush. The balance of all things, held together by the invisible threads of nature and law. And then, as the last light of day fades, you hear it, a soft meow, distant but distinct. The cat, the guardian, the silent protector. You smile, knowing that no matter where you go, this balance will remain. The bees will hum, the cats will watch, and the laws will continue to weave the threads of existence together. You rise from the stone, feeling the weight of the journey behind you, and turn to make your way back. The village, the people, the animals, they will be there, waiting, as always. And the law, quiet and steady, will continue to protect and guide them. Because in this world, nothing works without the small things. Nothing works without the quiet things. The path home feels different now, full of purpose, full of understanding. You're no longer just a traveler passing through. You are part of this world, part of the quiet balance that keeps it all moving forward. And as you walk, the world seems to hum with a gentle assurance, as if everything, at last, is exactly as it should be. The air is cooler now, the light dimming quickly as you make your way back toward the village. The rhythm of the path underfoot, the crunch of fallen leaves and dry grass beneath your boots, feels reassuringly familiar. You find yourself walking slower, more deliberately, as if each step takes you deeper into the heart of this place that has now come to feel like home. It's a small village, nestled in the hills, but it holds a world of its own. A world built on quiet, steadfast rhythms that you've come to understand in a way you never thought possible. By the time you reach the village's edge, the shadows are long and the first stars begin to blink in the evening sky. The stone walls of the village glow faintly in the twilight, and the smoke from chimneys curls lazily into the air, mingling with the scent of evening meals being prepared. The streets are quieter now, the hustle of the market long since quieted, replaced by the hum of daily life winding down. You pass the well again, its surface reflecting the soft light of the stars, and hear the faint murmur of voices from the cottages nearby. The village has settled for the night, each person and animal tucked away in their respective places, following the same ancient rhythms that have kept this world turning for generations. The cats are probably already curled up in their corners, the bees nestled in their hives, the people gathering around fires for their evening meal. And then, as you reach the center of the village, you hear the familiar soft meow of a cat, followed by the distinct thrum of a bee as it flits past you. You smile to yourself, knowing that the world here still follows its quiet, unspoken laws, the ones that protect the smallest and the simplest of creatures. You turn down the familiar lane toward your own small cottage. The door creaks softly as you enter, and the warmth of the fire greets you, its crackling sound a comforting reminder of home. The scent of herbs and wood fills the room, mixing with the faint smell of beeswax candles burning low on the mantel. You remove your boots and settle into the corner by the fire. The cat that had followed you home curls up on the rug beside you, its fur warm and soft against the chill of the evening. You reach down and stroke its back, feeling the steady rhythm of its purring beneath your hand. It's the same rhythm you've come to know in the village. The soft hum of life, the pulse of existence that connects everything: bees, cats, people, the land. You feel the weight of the journey you've undertaken settle around you, not like a burden, but like a quiet understanding. You've walked through this world, learned its laws, and found your place in it. The small things, the cats, the bees, the laws written in ancient scrolls, are the ones that hold it all together. They keep the balance, steady and sure, like the pulse of the earth beneath your feet. As the fire crackles softly, you close your eyes, letting the warmth and the quiet hum of the village settle you into a peaceful sleep. Outside, the stars twinkle softly above, the rhythm of life continuing, uninterrupted, as it always has. The cats still prowl, the bees still hum, and the law, in its quiet, gentle way, continues to weave the fabric of this world together. The morning comes softly, the kind of daybreak where the light gradually stretches across the hills, waking the earth without haste. The air is crisp, but there's a promise of warmth in the sun's rising glow. You rise early, as you've come to do, and step outside, breathing in the cool morning air. The village is still wrapped in the quiet of dawn, the streets empty except for the occasional cat that slinks through the alleys, its tail flicking in time with the quiet rhythm of the day. You walk toward the fields, where the land seems to open up in front of you, the early light casting long shadows on the grass. The earth here is rich, fertile, and still carries the scent of last night's rain. You can hear the faint hum of bees already beginning their work, their soft buzzing rising with the warmth of the sun. The cats, you know, are already in their places, watching, waiting, as they always do. You pause at the edge of the field and look out over the land, feeling a deep connection to this place. This land. This world that moves in such quiet harmony. The animals, the plants, the people, all of it flows together in a seamless rhythm that seems almost timeless. A cat crosses your path, its fur gleaming in the morning light, and you smile to yourself. It's a small thing, this creature, but it holds a purpose. It holds a place. And in a world where everything has a role, where every thread is part of the same tapestry, that purpose is just as vital as the largest oak tree or the tallest mountain. It's all part of the balance. You continue your walk through the fields, your boots sinking softly into the earth. The further you go, the more you understand how the land is shaped by the creatures that live on it, and how they, in turn, are shaped by it. The bees, the cats, the people, they are all part of this living, breathing system, each contributing in their own way, each holding their own value. As you walk, you pass an old stone wall that marks the boundary of the village. It's weathered and worn, but it still stands strong. It's a reminder, you realize, of the laws that have always governed this land. The ones that protect the smallest of creatures, the quietest of lives. The laws that keep the balance intact. They may not be written in books anymore, but they're still alive in the land itself, woven into every corner, every blade of grass, every flutter of wings. You pause at the wall, running your fingers along the stone, feeling its rough surface beneath your touch. It's solid, unmoving, like the laws that have stood the test of time. You think back to everything you've learned, the quiet power of the laws, the respect for the smallest things, the balance that has always been here. And you realize that it's not just the laws of Hywel that matter. It's the laws of life itself, the ones that have been passed down, generation after generation, not through written words, but through the actions of the people and creatures that share this land. You stand there for a moment, taking it all in. The quiet hum of the bees, the rustle of the leaves, the soft meow of a cat somewhere in the distance. It's all part of the same rhythm, the same law. And it's a rhythm that, despite the passing years, never truly changes. The sun climbs higher in the sky, casting a golden light over the fields, and you begin your walk back toward the village. There's no need to hurry. The world moves at its own pace here, and you've learned to move with it. You pass the familiar cottages, the quiet paths, the cats that sit in doorways, watching. Everything is as it should be. And you know, now, that the law, the quiet, unspoken law that governs this place, isn't something that can be written down. It's something that lives in the land, in the animals, in the people, in the balance that holds it all together. As you reach your cottage, the warmth of the hearth calls you back inside. The fire crackles softly, and the cat that has made your home its own curls up by the door, content in the quiet of the morning. You sit by the fire, your thoughts settling like the embers in the hearth. The village is at peace. The cats prowl. The bees hum. The balance holds. And the law, the quiet law that runs through the veins of this world, continues to weave the fabric of life, one small thread at a time. The days slip by with the soft rhythm of daily life, each one blending seamlessly into the next. You wake each morning to the same gentle hum of the village, its quiet pace, its quiet order. The sun rises and sets with a steady certainty, and the land around you remains as constant as the laws that govern it. The cats continue their silent patrols, the bees hum through the warm summer days, and the people go about their work, each one fulfilling their small but essential part in the grand scheme of things. You've learned, over time, to appreciate the simplicity of it all. The way the village runs, not through grand decrees or powerful rulers, but through a delicate balance of small acts, small lives. You've come to understand that the true strength of this place lies not in its laws, not in the words written in ancient scrolls, but in the quiet things. The things that are often overlooked, the cats, the bees, the whispers of the earth beneath your feet. One evening, as you sit outside your cottage, watching the sun dip behind the hills, you hear the familiar sound of footsteps approaching. You look up and see the old woman, the one who had spoken of the bees, the cats, and the laws that govern them, walking slowly toward you, a basket of herbs in her hand. She stops in front of you, her eyes twinkling with the same quiet wisdom that has always marked her presence. "You've been here long enough now," she says softly, sitting beside you on the bench. "Long enough to see the rhythm, the law that runs through everything." You nod, already understanding what she means. You've seen it, felt it, even. The law isn't just in the scrolls or the boundaries. It's in the land, in the animals, in the way the people move through their days. It's in the quiet moments, the small things that go unnoticed by most, but that are, in truth, the very heart of life itself. She looks out over the village, her gaze distant, as if taking in everything at once. The cats, the bees, the people, they all have their place, their role. And they don't question it. They just are. And that's what makes them strong. The law doesn't need to be shouted. It doesn't need to be enforced. It's lived. You sit in silence for a moment, letting her words sink in. The world around you is peaceful, unhurried, and you realize that the true beauty of this place lies in its simplicity. There's no need for grand gestures, no need for laws that bind the land in 1,000 clauses. The law is already here, woven into every thread of existence. The old woman stands, her movements slow but sure, and she looks down at you with a smile. "Remember this," she says softly, "the law is not something you follow. It's something you live. Every day. Every moment. It's in the way you treat the smallest creatures. The way you honor the land. The way you live in balance with everything around you." You watch her walk away, her figure disappearing into the twilight, and for the first time, you understand. The law isn't just something you study. It's something you become. It's not written in books or spoken by kings. It's written in the way the world moves, in the silent hum of life itself. As the stars begin to twinkle in the sky, you feel a deep sense of peace settle over you. The world, with all its quiet complexity, is just as it should be. The cats, the bees, the people, they are all part of the same rhythm, the same law. And in this world, that rhythm will continue, steady and unbroken, as it always has. You sit there for a while longer, the night growing colder around you, and you think about the journey you've taken, the lessons you've learned, the small things that hold the world together. And in that quiet moment, as the wind rustles the trees and the stars blink softly above, you realize that the law, in its simplest form, is just this: to live in harmony with everything around you, to honor the balance that keeps the world turning, to respect the small things, the quiet things, that make life worth living. And as the fire burns low, you smile to yourself, knowing that you've finally found your place in the world, not by following the law, but by living it. Sweet dreams.